January 3, 2026. Caracas slept. But inside the most fortified military base in Venezuela, a secret operation was about to change the country forever. A military operation designed with surgical precision would bring an end to the longest and most destructive regime in Latin America in the 21st century, that of Nicolás Maduro Moros. To understand the magnitude of what happened that night, one must first understand what Venezuela had suffered for years. Nicolás Maduro was not just a president with unpopular policies. He was the leader of a narco-dictatorship internationally recognized as such, accused by the United States Department of Justice of narcoterrorism, arms trafficking, and conspiracy to flood U.S. territory with drugs. Under his government, Venezuela, a nation with the largest oil reserves on the planet, collapsed economically. More than 7 million Venezuelans fled the country in the largest migration crisis in the Western Hemisphere. Inflation reached astronomical levels, hospitals were left without medicines, and organized crime took control of vast areas of the national territory with the direct complicity of the state. Maduro does not rule alone. He had the military, economic, and ideological backing of Cuba, Russia, and, equally important, China. Beijing purchased between 60% and 80% of Venezuelan oil exports, thereby financing the regime's machinery of repression. Venezuela had become, in geopolitical terms, an outpost of powers rivaling the United States just hours of flight from Miami. That was the reality the Trump administration was no longer willing to tolerate. In Washington, the decision to intervene was not impulsive. It was the result of years of geopolitical analysis, of failed diplomatic pressure, of sanctions that Maduro always managed to evade with the help of his international allies, and of a cold and calculated assessment of the national interests of the United States. President Donald Trump had made it clear since his return to the White House that the era of passivity toward hemispheric threats had ended. The Monroe Doctrine, reformulated for the 21st century, once again became the axis of U.S. foreign policy toward Latin America. No extracontinental power would have a free hand to install satellite regimes in the hemisphere. Venezuela represented the most urgent case, not only because of the oil, but because of the structure of alliances that Maduro had built. Groups like the Tren de Aragua operated with impunity. Hezbollah cells and Iranian operatives used the country as a base of operations. And Venezuelan narco-trafficking financed criminal networks that reached as far as the streets of Chicago and Los Angeles. The capture of Maduro was not a whim, it was a strategic response to a multidimensional threat. Months before that night, in August 2025, a secret CIA team infiltrated Venezuela without diplomatic cover. No embassy, no immunity, no safety net. Only agents trained to operate in the most hostile environments in the world. Their mission was to build a complete picture of the regime from the inside. Maduro's security patterns, his daily routines, moments of vulnerability, and the fractures in the Venezuelan military chain of command. To achieve this, they recruited key informants, people who lived alongside Maduro, who knew the security protocols of Fuerte Tiuna, the largest and most important military complex in Venezuela, located in the heart of Caracas. It was there that Maduro slept, worked, and believed himself untouchable. Among those informants, according to sources close to the operation, was reportedly none other than Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, who allegedly maintained secret communications with U.S. agents. If this is confirmed, it would represent one of the most significant political betrayals in recent Latin American history. With that information, the planners of Operation Absolute Resolve built an exact replica of Fuerte Tiuna at a classified base. For weeks, the Delta Force operators, the most lethal elite unit of the U.S. Army, practiced to exhaustion every corridor, every armored door, every likely point of resistance. They knew the operation would not allow improvisation. The December holidays were chosen for concrete strategic reasons. During that period, a significant portion of the Venezuelan armed forces was on vacation leave. The guard was reduced. Alert protocols were at their lowest level. In military terms, it was the optimal moment to act. However, nature did not cooperate immediately. Dense clouds over Caracas represented a real risk for low-altitude air operations. The mission was postponed 4 consecutive times. Each day of waiting increased the risk of a leak. 4 delays were the limit. If the mission was not executed in the next available window, the entire plan would have to be cancelled. The night of January 2nd arrived with clearer skies and with intelligence confirmation that Maduro remained in Fuerte Tiuna that night. At exactly 10:46 p.m., from Mar-a-Lago in Florida, President Trump gave the final approval. Operation Absolute Resolve began. The first move was invisible. A sophisticated cyber attack simultaneously paralyzed the communication systems, radars, and electrical networks of Caracas. The Venezuelan capital was plunged into darkness within minutes. Neither the Chinese-manufactured anti-air systems nor the Russian defense technology, proudly presented by Maduro as a guarantee of his invulnerability, managed to detect the threat or offer effective resistance. From 20 ground bases and naval platforms deployed across the Caribbean, a formation of aircraft began moving in silence. F-22 Raptors, F-35s, B-1 bombers, and the special helicopters of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, known as the Night Stalkers, specialists in nighttime infiltration operations. Approximately 150 helicopters flew over Caracas at low altitude. The full moon illuminated a city that did not know it was about to change forever. At 2:00 in the morning, as the aircraft approached Fuerte Tiuna, a guard post at the complex detected the convoy and opened fire. The pilot of an MH-47G Chinook helicopter was hit by 3 bullets in the leg. Despite the pain and the loss of blood, he maintained control of the aircraft and did not break formation. That act of discipline and courage was fundamental in preventing the operation from collapsing at its most critical moment. The helicopters landed in the designated zone. 80 Delta Force commandos descended and advanced toward the complex. With cutting torches, they opened armored steel doors. They confronted Maduro's Cuban personal guard, an element that demonstrated the dictator's dependence on foreign forces to protect himself from his own people, and neutralized 32 security personnel. Inside the complex, Maduro was awakened by the explosions. He grabbed his wife, Cilia Flores, and ran toward the reinforced security room, built specifically to survive situations like that. But by the time they reached its doors, the American commandos were already advancing from multiple directions simultaneously. The door to the safe room never closed. At 4:29 in the morning Caracas time, the encrypted signal arrived at Mar-a-Lago. Objective accomplished, sir. Nicolás Maduro captured. In less than 90 minutes, the operation had concluded. Maduro and Cilia Flores were taken to the landing zone, boarded onto the helicopters, and removed from Venezuelan airspace before the regime's military forces could react. From the Caribbean, they were taken to a U.S. warship, later transferred to the Guantanamo base, and then to a secure airport near New York, where he would face federal charges for drug trafficking and terrorism. The capture of Maduro was not only an act of individual justice, it was a geopolitical declaration with continental consequences. The first objective was to reduce China's presence in Latin America. Beijing had turned Venezuela into one of its main strategic partners in the hemisphere, securing privileged access to the largest oil reserves in the world at advantageous prices, while financing the survival of the Chavez-era regime in exchange for multi-million-dollar infrastructure and telecommunications contracts. With Maduro out of power, that network of dependency collapsed. The second objective was energy. Venezuela possesses approximately 17% of the planet's proven oil reserves. If this resource flows again into free markets under a legitimate government and in alliance with Washington, the United States would have decisive influence over global crude prices. Trump wanted to stabilize the price of a barrel around $50, which would reduce energy inflation at home and weaken strategic rivals that depend on high prices to finance their budgets, such as Russia and Iran. The third objective was the message. Trump wanted Greenland, Cuba, Nicaragua, Mexico, and Canada to see clearly that the commitments of American power are real and that threats are not empty rhetoric. The era of speeches without consequences had ended. But beyond strategic calculation, there was a dimension that must not be overlooked: the Venezuelan people. Millions of people who had spent decades suffering repression, hunger, political persecution, and forced exile. For them, that dawn of January 3rd was not a foreign intervention. It was the beginning of a real possibility of freedom. Operation Absolute Resolve lasted 90 minutes, but its consequences will be measured in decades. For the first time in modern history, a unilateral U.S. operation managed to extract a sitting head of state from his own territory without declaring an open war, without invoking Article 5 of any alliance, and without provoking a regional armed response. That redefined the limits of what is possible in hemispheric security policy. The world watched, some with relief, others with fear, most with astonishment. Because what happened in Caracas that night raised questions that the coming years will have to answer. What comes next for Venezuela? Can a genuine democracy be born on the ruins of such a deeply rooted dictatorship? How will alliances in Latin America be reconfigured from this moment forward? What is clear is that Nicolás Maduro, the man who proclaimed himself Chávez's heir and ruled with an iron fist for more than a decade, is no longer in power. The dictator who ordered hundreds of opponents imprisoned, who allowed his people to starve while he enriched himself, who turned Venezuela into a narco-state and a platform for powers hostile to democracy, was taken from his own fortress in less than an hour and a half. History does not always arrive in the way we expect, but sometimes it arrives.